That's Jimmy Stein. I'm Clint Lamb, and this is the Cover Crimson YouTube channel. Jimmy, college football needs a commissioner, according to Mike Elko, the Texas A&M head coach. Some people believe that he is correct. Others believe that he is not. But we're going to talk a little bit about that because it's very important to college football, or it could be very important to college football. We're going to be talking about Alabama's offseason workouts, showing some photos that they posted to Instagram. They're getting in some work, and they have some guys that look pretty good. And we're also going to be analyzing some of these photos and talking about some of these players. We'll be doing that as well. And then we'll also kind of just let the conversation carry where it may. But let's start with the college football commissioner. How important do you think this is to the future of college football to get somebody in power that can kind of help, create some sort of consistency and be a rule enforcer moving forward?
I almost consider it a little bit irrelevant because, right now, I mean, yes, I think on the surface, yes, college football needs a commissioner just like the NFL has, just like the Major League Baseball has. I mean, just like all the sports leagues have. They need someone in charge because clearly the NCAA and the NCAA's president has abdicated that position of responsibility. So college football needs a commissioner. I agree. However, I'm not sure right now it would change much or help much because the biggest issue we have right now in terms of running the sport, Clint, to me, is that the NCAA investigates or makes a decision, whether it's about somebody's breaking rules or the NCAA has to make a ruling about eligibility, for instance, and then the school or the player doesn't like it and they just run to court. And they just run to court. I mean, they don't like the NCAA's decision. I'm just going to run to court and get it changed. That has to change. Can you imagine if in the NFL, every time Roger Goodell handed down a punishment, someone ran to the courthouse? Every time.
Right.
It just wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. The NFL, has a system in place that sort of prevents that from happening largely through the collective bargaining agreement, which is probably where we're headed in college sports. But until schools start simply accepting someone as being in charge and you can't run to the courthouse every time you're upset, then to me, it's not really going to matter until that's addressed.
1000%. You hit the nail on the head. That's the problem, is it's not just about, placing somebody in a position to have the power. It's who's willing to actually give them the power that they need in order to execute their job effectively. One thing about Roger Goodell is he has to play bad guy. He's hated universally by every NFL fan. So you not only need to have somebody in that position who can accept or take the criticism and take the heat, but they also got to feel like, well, if I'm going to do all that, then I need to actually have the power. I need to understand that this hate, while I am, in some ways it's unwarranted towards me, I'm also the person that is, in a lot of ways, for lack of a better term, judge, jury, and executioner when it comes to a lot of this stuff. And that's widely accepted. And you don't want the constant pushback. And what kind of position will it put you in as far as what you have to deal with and the headaches? And I mean, you're going to be called to testify in court all the time. Like, it would just be an absolute nightmare for whoever was involved. And so that's why I think right now we got to get our ducks in a row and we got to actually start fixing some of this other stuff before we can even start to get on the topic of a college football commissioner. At least that's my opinion.
Whether the NCAA ruled that, let's use Alabama examples because everybody listening is an Alabama fan. Let's say that Nick Saban was the college football or college sports commissioner, and Nick Saban said, "Okay, Bediako, you're not eligible to play." What's the difference? I mean, Alabama's just going to run to court, right?
Correct.
And Joey Aguilar, you can't play. Your eligibility's up. Diego Pavia, you can't play. Your eligibility's up. Trinidad Chambliss, you can't play. Your medical red shirt was not approved at the time of your illness, which is required by the rules. Therefore, you can't play. And again, it doesn't matter who's in charge if you can just simply run to court if you don't like the outcome. That's what has to change. And hey, I say that as a former lawyer. I appreciate that everyone's got rights. These schools have rights as well. But it just really feels like in college sports to me right now, Clint, it's like the member institutions say, we want rules. What do they say all the time when they talk about NIL? We want guardrails. We want guardrails. then the very schools that say they want the guardrails break the rules. They're already breaking the rules. NIL rules have just started. It appears on the surface some schools are breaking those rules already. It appears on the surface. We don't know that yet. But the point being, the same schools that want these guardrails are the same schools that flaunt them and violate them. They want the rules to apply to everyone else, but not to them. So I think you said it, someone's going to have to agree that such and such is in charge, and their decisions won't be litigated. Their decisions are final. That would be nice. That's how the NFL works, and it seems to work pretty well.
It does seem to work pretty well. And I mean, just right now with where things are trending with college football, I mean, it's difficult to, it's going to change at some point. It's just a matter of when. How long does that take? This is way, way wild, wild west. And they've tried to get some guardrails in place, but they really don't have a lot of effect at this point. I think people have started to realize how they can manipulate the system right now. Like, they've gotten better at it. Each passing year, people are figuring out new things they can do. And I mean, Jimmy, I'll ask you this question, and this is kind of on this topic because this would be something that a college football commissioner would be dealing with. But do you foresee somebody pushing the issue of the no spring transfer portal window? As in, there is no spring transfer portal window, but someone decides to sue so they can transfer somewhere else if they're not happy with their role in the spring.
Yes, I foresee this coming. I do think this spring someone is going to challenge, someone somewhere is going to challenge this. I don't know that they're going to run to the courthouse and do it. I think what we're going to see, just as a guess, is you will see a player quit his school and basically resign from your position as linebacker at such and such school, and I'm not school, and leave that school and just simply enroll at another school and dare the NCAA to say that he's not eligible to play at that school. I think we will see that someone will try that. And if it works and it's high profile and everybody's talking about it and it works, then we don't really have portal windows. I mean, we either have portal windows or we don't.
Correct.
And if someone can just simply leave Alabama and enroll at Texas Tech and be eligible, then we don't have portal windows. We just have complete willy-nilly, leave whenever you want, go play wherever you want. And it'll be a real shame if that happens, because I prefer a system in place that everyone abides by. I far prefer that as opposed to total anarchy. But yeah, I can see it coming. I think someone's going to challenge it, and I think it's going to be done that way as opposed to just running straight to the courthouse.
Exactly. And that's kind of the problem that I think we're going to run into. Is I'm wondering what kind of power people are, the NCAA or really anybody is going to have to stop those players from doing that. And then once others realize it. Now, here's the thing. This offseason, my guess is there might be some people who foresaw that, but I think a lot have kind of allotted their NIL money. Maybe you can get a donor to kind of throw in a little extra where you can get a player if you really need it at a specific position. But I think for a large part, there's not going to be a whole lot of opportunities by entering the portal.
Because rosters are set. Rosters
correct.
are pretty set. I mean, everybody's kind of got their 105. I mean, you can't have over one. It's a hard cap. Everybody's not only capped at 105, you're capped at rev share. NIL has more or less sort of a what I would call a malleable budget. I mean, there's a budget. It could change. But rev share is set. Your roster number is set. If you just want to leave and go somewhere, you'd be hard-pressed to find a spot, frankly.
Well, and, Alabama, I want to say that they're sitting somewhere like either 92 or 93 players. Now, that could be off if there's some guys, that kid from, what was it? Was it West Georgia, I believe?
Leslie Black. You're talking about Black, something Black. Leslie Black.
Leslie Black, yes. Okay. He was a guy who was technically a part of the 105 that I didn't know existed. And I mean, no disrespect. And it wasn't until I went and looked into him when I saw that picture. Alabama specifically listed his name, signing autographs. And I'm like, Leslie Black, this is a football player. I don't know who this guy is. So I went and looked into him like, I can't believe I missed that. And then Charlie Potter with Bama Online had said this was a guy that I didn't recognize in the photo. And I
That's
was
a
like,
big
you're
deal.
right.
Shout out to my man, Charlie Potter, great friend. Charlie is the best we've ever had at recognizing players. I mean, in terms of not their uniform, in a t-shirt. I mean, he knows all our players by face better than anyone. I mean, I'm fairly good at it,
Yeah.
fairly good. Oh,
But
Charlie blows me away. I mean, he's the best. He's a bit of a savant, I
he
think, when
is.
it comes to.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So when Charlie's like, "Here's a picture of the defensive line," I don't know who this guy is.
We don't
It's
know who
like
that guy is. Then.
imposter.
Yeah.
We don't. I'm surprised Kalen DeBoer knows who it is if Charlie Potter doesn't know who it is.
That's exactly right, man. So it was when you see that kind of thing, I don't know if there's a couple of others like that are kind of what I would call stragglers, maybe, that we don't really know about. So I still think that they got a pretty good handle or some availability as far as that 105 is concerned. The problem for Alabama might be more so money. And would this kid just simply take a scholarship, or would we have to give him some sort of rev share? Can we come up with that money? Other places it might be, well, we don't have a scholar or a number available in our 105. And then at that point, can you really run a kid off? I mean, because it wouldn't be very difficult that would be really bad without a spring transfer portal window. Now, they could do the same thing if you did run somebody off, but it would be a very bad look for whoever did that. But yeah, I do think there would be limited spots. But what that would do is it would essentially say, if y'all don't get this fixed or corrected by the next time this rolls around, everybody's saving a little bit of money. Everybody's going to have some roster spots available where they can kind of go and pillage, someone else's roster. And we're already seeing this with, I think it's Thomas Hammock, if I'm not mistaken. Is that the correct Northern Illinois head coach?
I was
just
about to bring it up. You already did. We share the same brain. Yeah,
we really do. I will say some people are blaming him and saying he was kind of in some ways hypocritical because he went on that rant back in, I think, August, talking about, are these guys going to go play? Essentially saying our rosters kind of been pillaged and they're going to these bigger schools, and are they even going to end up playing? And it's a problem. And then he ends up jumping ship to go to the Seattle Seahawks to become, I think, the running backs coach and then some sort of offensive assistant as well. What I can personally say is I know that because I follow Mississippi State fairly closely, they got 3 Northern Illinois players for the 2025 season alone: Rasheem Thomas, Nevaeh Sanders, and Cam Thompson, a receiver. So he got their leading returning receiver from 2024. They got their best defensive lineman. He only ended up playing, I think, in 4 games for Northern Illinois in 2024, decided to redshirt, so he'd still preserve 1 more year of eligibility, transferred to Mississippi State. And Sanders was a situational pass rusher, a very effective situational pass rusher for Northern Illinois during, for multiple seasons. And he was another guy who elected to transfer to Mississippi State. And those 3 players combined for, I think, just under 270 snaps. A couple of them got over 100 snaps, but it was barely over that. The other, I think, played 30 or 40. And that's kind of his point. Northern Illinois, all those players could have really helped Northern Illinois. And they end up going 3-9. This is a coach that in 2024, he upset Notre Dame en route to eventually them participating in the national championship. But then they go 3-9 this past season, and their roster had already been pillaged once again by the transfer portal. And so he's looking at it and he's saying, I'm probably not going to have a job if I go 3-9 again. And they're taking all my good players, and I can't stop them because I don't have the available resources. I can't look at Hammock and say, I blame you for, before that happens, before you get fired. He was a very coveted coach to go back to the NFL. He spent, I think, 5 years with the Baltimore Ravens being their running backs coach. And so he elected to join the Seattle Seahawks, the reigning Super Bowl champions, to coach a position that has been very effective for them. So I can't blame him based off of the situation he was put in. But a lot of schools are kind of dealing with this. Once again, Jimmy, it's the Wild Wild West.
Yeah, for those unfamiliar, so the Northern Illinois coach, he's leaving his job to work for the Seahawks. So now a 15-day, well, when they make a hire, then a portal window will open. So Northern Illinois players are free to leave. But as Clint already pointed out earlier in the show, where can they go? Most everyone's spots are already taken, So, boy, those kids are in a really bad spot because I think they can leave, but they have no place to land. But I bet a handful of players will end up entering the portal because they will have a place to land because all those conversations are probably taking place right now. Hey, we got a spot. And boy, for Alabama fans that don't like the portal and get frustrated by it, imagine being a Group of Five fan, because they're in a situation like it, whether you're talking about Northern Illinois or South Alabama, they're in a position where if you have a player who's good and he has a good year, he's gone.
Correct.
All you get is one good year out of a player. No good player is going to stick around. They're going to leave because the South Alabamas and Northern Illinois can't pay what SEC or even ACC and Big 12 schools can pay. So those players leave. And gosh, again, you get one good year out of a player, and that's all you're ever going to get. They're going to leave.
And that, Fluff Bothwell ended up being Mississippi State's one of their top running backs, if not their top running back. He was their best, in my opinion. But, South Alabama, they found a diamond in the rough, and he had a phenomenal freshman season, and he was expected to be a huge part of their offense moving forward. Mississippi State, swoops in and scoops him up, and now he's their starting running back, and he's actually a very good SEC running back. He's going to continue to be a very good SEC running back. And so that's, another example of what you're talking about. And I can go ahead and tell you, it's not just those guys, those programs. I know for a fact, there are some Power 4 programs that don't have the ability. They do not have the ability to match or even come close. So if you notice a guy on their roster and you go through some backdoor channels and you make that contact and you evaluate properly, that player is more than likely gone because you don't have the resources to retain them, and it's pretty much a free-for-all. And for people who cover Alabama like us, we look at that and we say, it's fine because this in a lot of ways this helps Alabama, but at the same time, we also got to realize that it's unsustainable. It can't continue on in the way that it's going. There has to be some guardrails, and it can't just be guardrails to protect Alabama or protect the SEC or protect the Blue Bloods or the big programs. It's got to protect college football. Now, granted, I do think we're reaching a point or going to reach a point where there is a huge break. I definitely think that is coming. And I do think the priority has to be protecting your big dogs. But I also think that there's an element of this where I can remove myself from being an Alabama fan and covering Alabama and what it means for Alabama, because me saying that, me pointing out that Mississippi State pillaged somebody's roster, got several players, key players from them, and none of those guys ended up playing much. If someone ends up catching wind of that, it could deter a Mississippi State or an Alabama or somebody else from doing the same thing in the future, because they're like, yeah, that's a great example right there of guys who transferred, didn't end up working out. But I'm at least being fair and honest about it because I feel like this conversation deserves to have honest, dialogue. And so that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's crazy, but at least Alabama fans understand, the people that are listening right now, you understand that college football, like a lot of this stuff, Alabama can't compete with Texas when it comes to NIL. It is not even, you think the ass whipping that Alabama caught on the field by Indiana was bad? Texas and what they have, and it's not just against Alabama, it's against Georgia, it's against pretty much outside of maybe a handful of programs. Texas can do that financially to anybody they want to. That's a problem because that's going to create unbalance in this sport to a point where if you were sick of watching Alabama win when this wasn't a problem, you're certainly going to get sick of watching Texas and Texas A&M every offseason just stack talent. And we'll see if that translates to national championships. I don't see how it doesn't at some point. But, it's just, I do think guardrails are coming in some sense, but it can't come fast enough, in my opinion.
But even with their advantages, Alabama signed per, I think, the On3 rankings, a better high school class than Texas did, a year ago. And that's because, where I get frustrated, with some fans who believe if you're not spending the most, then you're not spending anything at all. Alabama is a have in the NIL era, not a have not. Alabama's a have. Alabama's a winner in the NIL era. As a matter of fact, NIL basically sprang to life in 2021. If you did a composite of the recruiting classes 2021 through 2026 and just counted recruiting over that period of time, without even looking up, I would almost guarantee you Alabama's number one, if not number 2 or 3, that no one in the NIL era has out-recruited Alabama for high school football talent. Now, other schools have in the transfer portal, because they prioritize the portal, whereas Alabama prioritizes high schools. But Alabama is a winner in the NIL era. And frankly, the NIL era has produced the golden age of Alabama basketball, has been right smack dab in the NIL era. That's proof that Alabama's a spender, that Alabama's a have, not a have not. But on the same token, you could say, well, maybe Alabama's a little bit like the Braves. I think the projection this upcoming year is that the Braves will have the 6th highest payroll in Major League Baseball, which is pretty remarkable considering, Atlanta's not New York or LA or Chicago or Houston. I mean, in terms of a massive size and support. But point is, Braves have the 6th highest payroll, but it feels measly compared to what the Dodgers spend. I think the Dodgers spend over 3 times what the Braves spend. And
good comparison.
But for the Braves fans that get forever frustrated over not spending money, you're number 6. You're number 6 out of 30 teams in payroll. They do spend. They're big spenders. It's just not the Dodgers. And I do think Alabama's sort of in a similar boat. Alabama's a lot closer to the top than the bottom, when it comes to ranking who spends. But you're not Texas. You're not Texas A&M. You're not Texas Tech in their situation. You're probably not Ohio State. But you're awfully near the top. And like I said, in the NIL era, no one has out-recruited Alabama over that 5 and 6 year period. Literally no one. If I'm wrong, Alabama's no worse than 2 or 3, but I believe Alabama number 1 by a good bit.
Well, and LSU is one of those where a lot of people are like, man, they just signed Sam Leavitt, and they signed Jordan Seaton, and they added a bunch of really big pieces out of the transfer portal. Mm-hmm. And I mean, number one, once again, when you pull a fish like Lane Kiffin, who Ole Miss very much wanted to keep, and you were desperate, he was going to have NIL demands. You were going to have to meet him as far as giving him the resources, at least early. I don't know if this was like hey, from now until the end of time, you have to allot me this much money to spend, in the transfer portal or, on the roster. Or if it was hey, for 3 years, we're going to give you this to help you build it and help you get up. I have no idea on that. But there was a commitment there to make that happen. And you're going to see that more as far as the big coaches and being willing to make a move. If you're going to want to pull somebody, you're going to have to make some sort of financial commitment to them to help them build the roster and give them exactly what they need and what they want. And when it comes to Alabama, I've made this comparison. Like South Carolina, Jacarius Peak, they did have a couple of big key players, Dylan Stewart, Lenore Sellers, that they paid money. Nick Harbor was one that they held on to, where they paid some of their top superstar guys, but they didn't have the number of players that Alabama did as far as paying your own. So they had a bigger portion, a much bigger portion that could be allotted to adding some superstars in the transfer portal. The difference is people will look at, and I understand the thought process is, well, South Carolina went 4-8, or I think it was 4-8 by the end of it, and Alabama went 10-2 in the regular season. And the gap between South Carolina and Alabama just shrunk because you paid to keep a lot of the same players on your roster. South Carolina added a bunch of new talent. But my point is that's kind of, in some ways, the problem. Like that's where the parity comes into play, is if you've got a roster that's good enough to compete, in order to retain that roster and not lose that roster, you've got to take care of your own guys. And a much bigger portion of your NIL funds are going to go towards roster retention. For South Carolina, they have to improve. They have to get better. And from their side of things, there's more of a desperation from their big donors and probably their fan base in general, where it's like, man, we got a taste of the good stuff, man. We almost made the college football playoffs. That was a hell of a season. We had a blast. Let's try to do that again. And then you end up going 4-8. It's miserable. You're back to being South Carolina. And now you're like, I just want to get back there. And you're willing to do anything that it takes. I don't know if Alabama, the big boosters at Alabama, or even the fan base has reached that level of desperation yet. They haven't hit rock bottom, in my opinion. So I understand that might not be popular to say, but that is my opinion on the situation. That's why things are going to be a little bit different. But despite everything I just said, I want to continue to reiterate, Alabama is remaining super competitive. They are spending money, as Jimmy is talking about. They are trying to build this the correct way, but they have a set of principles that I respect that they have. And some people might say, no, forget the principles, just do it however you can. You might get a short-term fix that makes you feel better, But I have continuously said, when you enter that realm, when you are willing to do that, you change forever how you have to construct your roster. And Alabama can't sustainably do that over the long haul. People right now, they're taking these swings. They're making sure that they get some of these key players. Can they continue to do that? Can LSU continue to give Lane Kiffin the funds and the resources year after year that he's going to need? Weren't they close to being a school that bankrupted, less than a decade ago or something, if I'm not mistaken? I remember there being a story about they were in a very bad financial place because I tweeted about it. But that's at the same time, LSU is another one of those fan bases that they're desperate to get back to the top. They were willing to try to do it with Brian Kelly. They were willing to pay Brian Kelly to get him out of there. They were willing to pay to get Lane Kiffin in. If you don't think they weren't willing to put quite a bit on top of that to try to get a roster that was worth, fielding an elite team in 2026, you're sadly mistaken.
You still got to pick the right guys too. I mean, it's one thing to spend money, but it's another thing to pick the right guys. I'll just use Florida State as an example. They're extremely hectic. I mean, they're busy in the transfer portal. Yep. They want to buy players out of the portal, and they have spent a lot of money, not getting a lot of bang for their buck, and they spend money. So not everybody that spends money is picking the right guys. And you brought up South Carolina earlier. Everybody does a little differently. I mean, think about it in NFL draft terms. Round 1 through round 7, everybody's got 7 picks. Well, the way this is working is that, let's say if you're South Carolina, they're like, we don't want to pick in rounds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We want 2 first-round picks. So the rules are, okay, you can have 2 first-round picks, but if you're going to spend that much, then your other 5 guys, they all have to be 7th-round picks. So They have 2 first-rounders and 5 7th-rounders. And that's how they do it. Texas Tech doing something kind of similar. They're going big at the top, but that means that they're having to take a lot of 7th-rounders. Alabama does it by value, which means basically Alabama's 7th-round draft, they have a first-round pick, a second-round pick, a third-round pick, a fourth-round pick, a fifth-round pick, a sixth-round pick, and a 7th-round pick. That's their team. And see, I'll take Alabama's team over how South Carolina's doing it because, everyone's paid their value. And I think you got a better team when you have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 instead of 2 first-round picks and 5 7th-round picks.
Especially when you feel like that your 5th, 6th, and 7th-round picks, if your coaching staff is good at evaluating and you feel like those are closer to 1st, 2nd, or 3rd-round picks, then you're going to have an advantage over a lot of those other teams that are spending for that, but they're, either not great at evaluating like a Florida State or, they had to spend a lot more money to get there, which is unsustainable.
That's the key. The key in all this is the evaluations. Whether you're talking about those first-round picks, are they legitimate first-round worthy guys, or are you finding a guy in 5th or 6th rounds actually better than that, but you're paying them round 5 money, round 6 money, but they're actually better than that? I'll give a great example with Alabama's depth chart right now, wide receiver. I see it in 2 very distinct groups, Alabama's wide receivers going into the spring. There's the first-team rotation guys, Ryan Williams, Latsier Brooks, Noah Rogers, Rico Scott, Derek Meadows, and probably Cedarian Morgan. Those 6 guys, they're going to play with the first team, or I'd certainly project it today. The rest of the group, there's 5 more. Those are what I'm going to refer to as the depth. I'll be surprised if any of them make a run at the first team. I'm talking about MJ Chirgwin, Tyler Henderson, Aubrey Walker, MJ Mathis, Amari Sapp. Those 5 guys, there's your depth. But here's the deal, and this is why I'm excited about this, and why I'm talking about it. Of those depth guys, those 5 depth guys, there's a good chance 1 or 2 of them are going to be really good. And that's what's fun about it to me. I'm going to get, as a fan of the evaluation process, I'm going to get a lot more joy or a lot more entertainment value out of those 5 depth guys. Who's going to be good there? Because 1 or 2 of them probably will be. Now, the numbers suggest, or history suggests, math suggests, not all 5 of them. You're not going to hit on all 5 of them. But 1 or 2 of them are going to be really good. And which ones are they? Like Tyler Henderson, who we talked about, getting Saturday. It's hard to watch his film and not imagine him making a run at that first-team rotation. But obviously, he's a guy who flipped from Kennesaw. You're trying to fill out your room. On the surface, that's a depth guy.
Correct.
But then you watch the tape and you're like, I don't know. He looks pretty good. He's got the production. He's got adequate size, 10, 800 meters, so he can run at least in the 4.6 range. probably a little better, frankly, at 10-8. I'm just saying that the evaluation is always the key. Yeah, you can lump them in like I did. Hey, here's your first team and here's your depth. A couple of those depth guys are probably going to be pretty good over time.
Exactly. And that's what you just hit on. You have to make sure that you're hitting the guys that you're paying up for on the high school ranks, on the high school level. And you have to make sure that you're finding some diamonds in the rough to complement those guys, becoming a starter or becoming a key rotational piece. So let's just go through it in 2025. Did Keelan Russell, are we really excited about him? Do we feel like he can make a massive impact on Alabama's roster?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
What about Michael Carroll? Do we feel like he's trending in the right direction? He would have been easily one of the top transfer portal offensive tackles had he entered. What about Dijon Lee? How's he doing? Is he doing all right? I feel like he's doing all right. How do we feel about Jackson Lloyd? Do we feel like he could be Alabama's starting left tackle in 2026? He absolutely could be. What about Chuck McDonald? Haven't heard a lot from him.
Could be cornerback number 3. I don't rule out Chuck McDonald being cornerback 3 this fall. That's very, very possible.
What do we think about Ivan Taylor? Didn't play a lot, but he feels like one of those guys from a depth standpoint. I'm still extremely high on him. I don't know about you.
I think Ivan Taylor, I mean, this is a bit of a stretch, but I'm comfortable saying this. Had Hubbard and Sabb gone pro, I think Ivan Taylor's ready to be a starting safety in the SEC. I really think, I think he's that good, but he's not only dealing with Hubbard and Sabb. I don't know that he's going to be ahead of Zay Mincy, who's another guy who's ready to be a starting safety. Drake Kirkpatrick Jr., I've been a fan of from minute number 1, even though he wasn't the most highly rated guy, but I've loved him from the start. Those are 3 safeties that I think all could be starters somewhere, but Hubbard and Sabb are the understandable show for right now.
What about Justin Hill? We like how he's trending. I would say so, right? What about A.K. Deer? What do you think about A.K. Deer?
That's a little more problematic to me. I would admit that I'm not down on AK at all. I'm not down, but I do think this is fair. Alabama struggled at running back last year, and they obviously didn't feel like he was an answer. So that gives me pause. But that said, there's 6 guys, I think, in that running back room this fall in scholarship. 6 guys, I believe, 6 or 7. I think it's 6.
6.
I think A.K. Deer is top 2. Talent-wise. Now, that doesn't mean he's ready to play. That's a difference. But AK, it gives me a little pause that they didn't go to him last year when they were struggling at running back. So I'm high on him. To me, a little bit more of a projection or guess than some of the others.
If they would have had the problems that they had this past season and he was in year 2 or year 3, I would have a massive problem with it. Him being a true freshman, I don't disagree.
I agree.
But I feel like that's kind of, I saw him back in the spring and I saw a guy who's going to take a little bit longer than I originally thought. And I was totally fine with that because it just recalculated my expectations for him and how it played out. That's why anytime anybody was pushing, it's time to go to AKD or we got to give him a chance, I kept saying, look, based off of what I've seen, I just don't see it. Now, granted, they started to give him those opportunities because they were desperate, didn't last long. But, that is one where, if you want to go that route, I understand. But as you mentioned, still easily one of the most talented running backs on this roster. And if I had to guess, I think he's probably going to end up in the top 3 somewhere in 2026. I can't tell you exactly where. And that means that a Kevin Riley or a Daniel Hill would end up outside of the top 3 for my projections. But that's kind of where I'm at. I still like A.K. Deer. Derek Meadows, do we like how he's trending? He played a little bit, but he's certainly a guy who, because not all these guys are going to automatically be starters as true freshmen and stuff, but I'm talking about guys who showed promise, did enough to get on the field, contribute in some way, and still brings close to a top 100, recruit skill set to the table that they can build around. What about Caleb Edwards? How did he do as a freshman?
Extremely well. He needs some physical development. I wonder a little bit about Caleb Edwards. To me, Clint, is some freshmen are so good you can't keep them off the field. Other freshmen are playing because he's the best of the options you have. And I think Caleb is more best of the options they had, as opposed to he's so good we can't keep him out of the lineup.
Here's what I will say, though. I think it was a mix of both. Because even before, now granted, Danny Lewis was dealing with the injury for all throughout the offseason, but I continuously heard that they actually were really, really, really excited about Caleb Edwards. And the coaching staff looks at him and they see a strong potential first-round draft pick in the future. So while he was pressing action before he was ready, and he wouldn't have seen the role that he saw had it not been for the injuries and stuff that happened in front of him, I think that the coaching staff also knows what kind of talent he is, and they're very excited about it.
Yeah, and I'm super excited about him going forward. I think we're going to see a much better Caleb Edwards after 1 year. I think in the strength program, I think that in and of itself, a full year in it is going to make a gigantic amount of difference for him at the line of scrimmage. But I'm super high on Caleb Edwards. I think he's going to be a really good player. I was saying last year as a true freshman, was he one of the better tight ends in the SEC? Of course not. But who would expect that? No one should have expected that. But he's gonna be a thing.
Let's go to the bottom. Let's go to some of the guys who are at or near the bottom. Let's go ahead and make that jump. London Simmons, how do we feel like he did as a freshman?
A fantastic evaluation, a great example of how getting him into camp is so important. He wasn't ranked high. Alabama recruitniks out there that follow all the rankings and the message boards because you're into the recruiting rankings. When Alabama took London Simmons, you probably were going, why are they taking this guy? It's like a 3-star. I don't know this guy. Because they had him in camp. He wasn't a 3-star to Alabama. They had him in camp and immediately, like, this is a guy we want. And we see why. He was fantastic. And I see him as a just a first team starter going forward and a heck of an NFL prospect.
I will say, I was reading something recently. I think it was last week sometime. And I give Andrew Bone with Bama Online a ton of credit because they did like a superlatives piece. I think it might have been just for the defensive side, but like one of the, I don't remember exactly what what he gave him, but it was essentially like you're under the radar pick, for in the recruiting class, or it was something as far as a guy who's going to have a role. And he predicted London Simmons, and he was sky high on him. And I got to say,
that was before he showed up, right?
Way before. I'm talking. It was after the signing. Once they had the signing day.
London Simmons was a summer guy like Caleb Edwards, right?
He was
He didn't even go through spring practice.
Correct.
And look what he did.
This was in like December. I want to say like after signing day. Now I could be wrong on that. It was either after the December signing day or the February, but either way, before spring practice started, they did a superlatives piece, and Andrew Bone was all over it. So give him massive credit for that, because when I watched, I saw a guy who had long-term potential. I liked him, but I didn't see a guy who was going to come in and do what he did. And I was just flat out wrong and underestimated him in a major way. What about Mal Waldrop? Didn't end up playing a lot, but do you like him?
Yes, I hear. And part of this is just inside scoop because obviously he's a redshirt that didn't really play much. So, in terms of what I'm hearing from inside the program, very high on Mal Waldrop. I would even consider him a dark horse starter this spring. I don't rule that out. I'm not projecting him. I'm not predicting him. I'm also not ruling it out. I love his positional versatility. He was the scout team center for most of last fall, but he spent last spring, a lot of it playing tackle. That's remarkable for a true freshman to have already been moving around. And yeah, I think Mal Waldrop is if not a starter in 2026, a future starter.
I agree. What about Luke Metz? How do you feel about him?
Super good. Another word from inside the program. One of my favorite words, actually. This is the word I was told. Dude.
Oh, you were told that. That was okay.
Dude.
Someone used the Jimmy word on Jimmy.
Someone used the Jimmy word on Jimmy, and I don't even think they're aware that was my word. But I'm like, hey, dude. No, he's fantastic special teams player. Also a strong candidate to start. You at one point were saying, hey, watch him be on the first team. I think absolutely no worse than linebacker 3 or 4.
Exactly. Marshall Pritchett, how you feel about him?
Very good. Very good. I think he is crazy, maybe a crazy comp for some people. I mean this is 100% compliment. I think he's Josh Cuevas. I think he can be a Josh Cuevas type pass receiver from the position. And maybe if his physicality continues to develop, maybe I'm underselling that. Maybe he's better than that. But I think as a pass receiver, I think he's got Josh Cuevas potential.
And I understand exactly what you mean when you say that. He's longer than Cuevas. One of the things about Cuevas is that he's not overly long. He's not tall, first of all, 6'3", but he's also, so he's never going to have this crazy catch radius. He's never going to be that style of tight end. But I do think from being just a reliable option, can do some as far as after the catch, as far as blocking. I probably underrated his blocking for a majority of the season. I really did. Now, granted, I don't think he was an elite blocker. I don't think he was CJ DePury. I don't think he was Robbie Utes. I think they got elite blocking out of their tight ends in 2024. But in 2025, I think maybe I was just, blinded a little bit trying to compare it to those guys, and it was not fair. But when I went and evaluated him, because I've been watching some tight ends for the NFL draft, and I've been comparing his blocking to theirs. I'm like, actually, he was a pretty good blocker for Alabama this season. But Marshall Pritchett has a lot of blocking upside as well.
I think so. I mean, to me, Marshall Pritchett will be as good as the blocking allows him to be. But I have complete confidence in him as a pass catcher, really already. Even when Cuevas was hurt last year and broke the foot, a part of me already was like, I'm not going to be surprised if Marshall Pritchett has 6 catches this weekend for 70 yards. That won't surprise me. He didn't do that, but I haven't lowered my expectation for him. I think, and plus I love him as a duo. Like, he came in with Caleb Edwards. I mean, I don't think that's going to be just the show going forward, but I wouldn't mind if it was Caleb Edwards at Y, Marshall Pritchett at H. Pretty good duo to me.
Yeah, and I will say, I think that Edwards has the ability to play Y or H. He's Y size, but he actually played a lot of H. He was kind of a move guy. Now, granted, Josh Ford actually played a lot of H for Oklahoma State too. You look at him; he's 6'6", 265 pounds.
Like
and you think that dude's a pretty much a tackle. Give him
like a third
10
tackle.
pounds. Yeah, I mean, but he actually, not only did they play him at that H, but they also flexed him. They made him a big slot. They put him as a big body perimeter receiver, and they let him block it on the perimeter as well. And he was very effective.
He's the portal guy not enough people are talking about. I mean, almost
Agreed.
No one talks about him, and I think he could be the starter at tight end. It's not going to shock me at all if he's even ahead of Caleb Edwards, who I love. But boy, you talk about something that could really fix the run game. A 6'7", 265-pound tight end. That'll help you fix the run game.
It certainly can. And here's what I'll say about him too. When like I was talking about like Rasheem Thomas, who he was at Northern Illinois. We were talking about them earlier, ended up going to Mississippi State. He redshirted 4 games into his final season with Northern Illinois so he could retain a year of eligibility and transfer and still actually be able to play. Josh Ford he was a true sophomore this past season, or was supposed to be. He elected to take a step back in redshirt, and I think a lot of that was the attention he was getting from teams already saying, brother, I mean, considering what you did as a true freshman for Oklahoma State and then what you had done in just the 4 games that you started in 2025, we think you got huge potential. And so he went ahead, despite the fact that he's got several years of eligibility, and he took a step back and elected to enter the transfer portal once it came open, and then ends up at Alabama. I don't think that's a coincidence. I'm not saying that Alabama tampered, but I think that a lot of schools, he was getting a lot of attention. They're like, brother, I'm telling you, get out now. You're at 4 games, and it was strategic. And so I think it's a much different situation. We need to be talking about Josh Ford quite a bit more. What about Lottie Brooks? What do you think about him?
I think the Jalen Waddle comparisons are both unfair and semi-reasonable.
That is semi-reasonable. Very good way to put it. And
I mean, that's who he is to me, but he's not Waddle. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But you can say it with a straight face, that the comparison, the comparison's not ridiculous.
It's really not. And, what you have to do is you have to go compare Jalen Waddle freshman year and Lottie Brooks freshman year to get an accurate, and I still think Jalen was ahead, but I also think that because I think the only thing that stood in the way of Jalen Waddle being like an 800-900 1,000-yard receiver was that he had 3 other first-round picks in that wide receiver room. Future first-round picks.
Ryan and Germ, and even Horton, older kids sort of soaked up the oxygen in the room. But I think Lottie was, I agree, he was capable of a 700-800-yard season last year as a freshman. I fully believe. I think the Lottie we saw at the end could have been the same Lottie we could have seen in September, October. He just didn't get those opportunities until the injuries mounted up at wide receiver, just like they had everywhere else. And he's tough too. He's a tough,
very
kid.
tough.
He's tough. That's a little different. It's not like Waddle's not tough, but Brooks' toughness stands out. It's almost like trait number 1 with him.
And one of the things to look out for is when did they go to him? They consistently went to him in critical key moments. He started to earn it, and he started to earn that trust of, I'm Ty Simpson. I need a big play. Jeremy always was reliable on that front. I think in a lot of ways, Josh Cuevas was very reliable on that front. It's a key 4th down. You're down on the goal line. You can go to Josh Cuevas. He can get you a touchdown. But Lottie Brooks became one of those types of players. And what I will say is right now, you just lost Jeremy Bernard and you just lost Josh Cuevas. So the one guy who I say is a consistently, when you need a massive play and it's crunch time, you want to say that about Ryan, and I do think he's got that upside and that ability, but with the drops and stuff, I don't know if he would be considered that trusted, reliable option right now. He just has tremendous upside. He certainly is a spark plug. I mean, he can be a big-time playmaker for you, but Lottie Brooks, I would say right now, is the only consistently reliable playmaker Alabama has returning on offense in 2026. I don't think that's not nothing. I'll put it that way. But then you start – go ahead.
No, I'm saying it's huge. It's huge. When you consider that – because I'm a big Ryan Williams fan, and I think he gets over-criticized, even with the drops. I think he's over-criticized. But at the same time, I agree with you. If Alabama played a game next week and it's 3rd and 8 and you got to have it, throw it to 17.
That's exactly right. And you know, I mean, you've got other guys that I like on, you know, from this 2025 class. I mean, I think Steven Boumwa, if it clicks for him, is it going to click in 2026? I don't know. I think there's a lot in front of him still. But whenever it does click, I'm completely like this guy has tremendous upside. So for what he was and where he was ranked, and I know that Alabama had to compete to get him and everything, but he's the kind of guy you take a swing on. He's the guy that has tremendous upside. Kavonte Henry, I've said this a couple of times this offseason. I don't necessarily feel like we're talking about him enough. He's the only returning Bandit on the roster. He's the only one that I could even really guarantee you is going to play Bandit. I mean, because everybody else, it's not a guarantee that Jamarian Matthews is, or Nolan Wilson is, or Des Zulu, or Devin Tompkins. I think just about all those guys are going to be playing Bandit. But Jamarian Latham is another one. Don't know if he's going to play Wolf. Don't know if he's going to play Bandit. But I can almost guarantee you Kavonte Henry is going to be playing Bandit. Still think that him coming out of the JUCO ranks, he had some upside and some juice as far as being a B and C gap defender. Very disruptive on that front. He had a little bit of a transition, but that's the kind of guy, once again, that you take a shot at.
He got on the field.
He did.
I mean, you had Overton until you didn't have him, but even when you lost Overton, you still had Jordan Renaud and Keon Keeley. Guess who played anyway? Fatutoa Henry, Kavonte Henry. He's out there. He was out there playing, and they had other options. So that is evidence of something good.
That's exactly right. And Daryl Johnson's another one. Love the upside. Don't know if he ever is going to end up being a starter for Alabama. Can't tell you that definitively. You know, I like a lot of the other options they have in that room, but he's really athletic. I think he can provide something on special teams, and he has the upside to eventually be a very good player for you. So my point in saying all that is we were discussing the importance of hitting at the top. And if you're going to recruit, especially if you're going to put an emphasis on high school recruiting, you can't take swings and spend a decent chunk of money on a guy at the top and then him be a complete whiff. And you certainly can't do it consistently. But you also need to have the ability to evaluate and pull in players who can help you as far as the 3 stars or the lower ranked 4 stars, whether they be role players, whether they eventually be starters. If you just look at 2025, which is the only class that we have from Kalen DeBoer up to this point to know exactly his guys, bringing them in, everything else, very good job as far as very exciting. You got impact, not just contributions, but from a lot of those 5-star guys, you got actual impact, became starters. Michael Carroll became a starter. Dijon Lee became a starter. Justin Hill was a top 100 guy who became in a lot of ways like a co-starter with the number of snaps that he was playing and the opportunities and the big time moments. So there's just so many of these guys that I trust this staff's ability to get these types of guys in. I look at this 2026 group and I see a lot of the same. You know, I see guys at the top, you know, an EJ Crowell, a CD Morgan, a Jordan Edmonds from a depth standpoint, or could end up being a player who, I mean, I don't know whose job he would take. I don't think he's taking Zabian's, and I don't think he's taking Dijon Lee's, but he could be a guy who could rotate in.
Quarterback 3.
Correct.
I mean, I said Chuck McDonald earlier in the show could be. Jordan Edmonds could be too.
Absolutely.
So could Carmelo O'Neal.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
Good competition there.
Jaira Edwards is a guy who I think can come in and immediately be a Husky too, and actually be a player who, despite the fact that he might not be a starter, I love Red Morgan. I love him. I also wouldn't completely rule out the idea of Jaira Edwards being Alabama's starting Husky by the end of the season. He's just that talented.
Couldn't agree more. You know, I said before earlier, when we were discussing 2 different types of freshmen that play, too good to keep off the field or the best of all the options. Jaira Edwards is in that first category.
He is.
I think too good to keep off the field. And I love Red Morgan too. To me, Red Morgan is a weird reincarnation of Malachi Moore. To me, they're kind of the same guy. And I mean, that's a compliment. By the way, Malachi Moore, starting safety, New York Jets. You know, I think Red Morgan is Malachi, which is great. Jaira might be Jaira might be more. I'm not going to say Caleb Downs. That's not right or fair. But I think Jaira Edwards has all sorts of NFL value in his skill set. Now he's got to go prove it. Caleb did. John haven't proved anything yet, but I think he's got enormous first round type upside, and not many safeties go in the first round, really.
I'm not saying that he's the same player, but I think in some ways the versatility, like Brian Branch ended up being a starting nickel in the NFL on as a rookie and was an impact player. And then as a second year player, he moved to safety, was every bit as impactful. And then of course he had this season ending injury and was pretty gruesome. I hope prayers up for him. Hope he ends up he's one of my favorite players of all time, by the way.
I love that.
And then so not the same player, but the impact both in the slot. And then the NFL is going to look at Jair Edwards. And they're going to say, first of all, they're starting to value the nickel more than they ever have because of the versatility that it provides. It's the same thing as if you got a Mike linebacker or an off-ball linebacker that has the versatility to walk up on the line of scrimmage where you can easily go from 4-man to 5-man fronts. And what I mean by that is essentially from a 4-3 defense it's not a nickel. So it'd be a 4-2-5 to essentially giving you an odd front with 2 outside linebackers because that off-ball walked on the line of scrimmage. That provides your defense with a ton of flexibility on the NFL level. It's the same thing with the nickel. Those two positions, if you got that versatility, if you're a Jahad Campbell type of linebacker, if you're a Brian Branch type of safety, then you are going to be very coveted. And Jair Edwards is one of those types of players where in some ways he almost plays like a linebacker. He's not as big as a linebacker, but he's also not terribly far off. I don't think his build is he's not stocky, even though he's 6'2", 210. But he is physical like a linebacker. He can do all the nickel things from a run stopping standpoint, but he also has man and zone cover traits that you look for. You can kick him back to safety. So he's a guy that I love, Red Morgan. I really do. And I think Red's going to be a great player. So I'm not saying, I'm predicting right now Jair is going to take the starting job. But I'm telling you, if it ends up hitting week 6 or week 7 and Jair Edwards is Alabama's starting Husky and Red Morgan is not injured, I won't be floored. I won't be surprised.
I won't be floored. The only thing that will surprise me is if Jairus not in the picture. That will surprise me.
Correct. Correct.
Jairus starting would be less of a surprise than him just not being in the picture. In terms of that's the kid I see. I love that Brian Branch comp, by the way. I mean, and I agree it's not an apples to apples because I think they're kind of built slightly differently, but the skill set and the ability to play every position back there, and to be the real physical guy at the line of scrimmage, but also have a lot of coverage ability and man-to-man type ability. That's a rare bird there.
Yeah, and I mean, I used to look at Brian Branch and say, I don't think I'd love him at corner, but I think he could help you at corner. I think he could play at corner. Jair Edwards is the same way. I don't love, if you put him on the perimeter, I wouldn't love it. I don't feel like that would fit his skill set best. But if you had just a run of injuries, a slew of injuries, and you had to get to a point where Red Morgan, and they like Red, they can play him out there on the perimeter as well. But I think Jair Edwards has that type of ability where he could hold up decently as a perimeter corner as well. But then you look at Jet Tomala, I think there's a big emphasis on continuing to stack quarterbacks and guys that you can develop and guys who none of these guys are afraid of competition. They're not afraid to be a 2 quarterback class. They're not afraid of the guys who came before them. I don't think Elijah Haven is either. I don't think, obviously Trent Seaborn isn't. So, Tomala, you bring him in, you develop him, you maybe have a very, very good starter for the future. C.D. Morgan, already mentioned him. Feel like he can come in and help your football team. Jamarian Matthews, feel like he can come in and help your football team. Nolan Wilson, we've talked about him. Feel like he can come in and help your football team. As I'm going down this list, it feels a lot like last year. You got the Keelan Russell that you're not sure is going to start as a freshman. You got the Jet Tomala here who you really are thinking he's probably not going to be a guy who's in the conversation in year 1. But then outside of just the high-quality quarterback, you've got a bunch of dudes right there at the top. You're like, I could see him helping. I could see him helping. Man, I could see this guy potentially starting. That's exactly what they got from last year's group. Now that group is sophomores, and they've been able to retain them. And guess what? Next year, those guys are going to be juniors, and they're probably going to retain them again. And then this group, when you get those key players, they're sophomores next year. And now you're starting to cook with gas. Everybody wants an experienced team. This is why we say 2027 is a much more promising outlook for Alabama. It's not they don't have talent right now. It's that the experience, if they can retain how they've been retaining players, the key ones, the ones that they really need and want to keep, by that point, they're all going to be juniors and seniors and sophomores, and everybody's a little bit older. That should help Alabama.
Couldn't agree more that 2027 kind of feels like a potential monster year for Alabama. But at the same time, I don't want people to think that I'm blowing off 2026. I know Brett McMurphy today at On 3 had a bold projection thing, and not only did he not have Alabama in the playoff, he had Alabama in the Duke Mayo Bowl, and
Go against Louisville.
I mean, Blake Byler looked it up, yeah, and no team that's made it to the Duke Mayo Bowl has been better than 8-4.
Correct.
And I think, just myself, my knowledge of the bowl landscape, if Alabama finishes 8-4, I don't think they'd be in the Duke Mayo Bowl. I think they'd be in a higher bowl than that if they finish 8-4. So in my mind, Brett McMurphy has Alabama at 7-5, which I find absurd. I almost want to. I don't want to say it's out of the realm of possibility because it's college football and who the heck knows what can happen. And Alabama has lost to teams they shouldn't lose to under DeBoer. But there's just no indication that Kalen DeBoer is a 7-5 football coach at Alabama. There's just no indication of that whatsoever. But I do agree. I'm not going to agree with Brett McMurphy's projection at all. As a matter of fact, my projection right now, I see Alabama as a playoff bubble team. And by that, I mean, this is too specific for a prediction this far off, but I see Alabama as sort of a last team in or last team out type of thing for the playoff in the fall. So I'm not agreeing with this projection at all, but I'm with you that 2027 feels like that's when everything looks like it might fall into place in that starting lineup.
Yeah. And I mean, when you look at Alabama's schedule, I mean, East Carolina in week 1, you're going on the road to play a revamped, rebuilt Kentucky squad who could end up being better than a lot of people think. A lot of moving parts, a lot of new pieces.
Kentucky game's dangerous.
It is very dangerous.
And that's not me dumbing down Alabama's expectations, Clint. If I consider Georgia the best team in the SEC next fall right now, I'd say it's Georgia. It might be Texas, but I'm going to go Georgia. If Georgia was playing at Kentucky in week 2, I would tell Georgia, watch out.
Yep.
Watch out.
That has a lot more to do with Kentucky than anything you're saying about Alabama. Completely agree. And then you got Florida State, who is Gus Malzahn less now. And, he was a big problem. Should be a revenge factor.
You know who their quarterback is, right?
No.
I tripped up Luke on that this morning. And the look on his face, when I say it, you're going to go, oh, Ashton Daniels.
Oh, right. You are.
Yeah. And I told you, that gets it gets to say, I got the same reaction from you. I mean, it is, how did I forget that? And I forgot. The reason I forgot, I'm like, we play Florida State at Castellana. Who's their quarterback? And I Googled it, and I'm like, oh, how did I forget that? But yeah, Ashton Daniels. And hey, the dude's got some ability. I mean, it's just weird that we just played him and beat him.
Great point.
At Auburn.
I think he was a pretty good quarterback for them. I really do. Now, granted, they need some help around him. They got some receivers and stuff, but I think that Alabama revenge factor. I would feel pretty good about Alabama there. Not saying it's a shoe-in, but I'm saying I worry about Kentucky. I think South Carolina's got a chance to be really good this year. They've really invested in the portal. Their offensive line's been abysmal the last couple of years. I'm curious to see what Lenore Sellers looks like with a decent to good offensive line. And between Jacarius Peak and they added two, a bona fide, I think, freshman starter, at least one at guard. They added the East Carolina tackle, who's pretty good, who's going to probably compete at right tackle for them. They're Josiah Thompson, who was a former, I think, borderline five-star recruit, played a lot of left tackle for them this past season. But the fact they're bringing in Jacarius Peak, he's probably going to be playing or competing on the right side with that kid from East Carolina. So it's like I think they're going to be a problem. I think going on the road and playing Mississippi State, I think the type of offense they run, they could end up being fairly dangerous. Camario Taylor, remember the name, the dude's got tons of ability, tons. And so that's going to be tough. And then you play Georgia, and then you go on the road and play Tennessee.
He's like a bigger Lenore Sellers. He's like a bigger Lenore Sellers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's who he is.
I mean, just his ability to run and the fact that he's got arm talent to complement, but he's still kind of erratic and he's still learning, mechanical stuff and how to get that under control. But definitely has that ability. But then you play Georgia, you go on the road and play Tennessee, you play Texas A&M, you go on the road and play LSU, you go on the road and play Vanderbilt. I mean, then you got UT Chattanooga, then you got Auburn. It's a tough schedule. It might not be the toughest in the country, but there's some sneaky tough games. And there's
a 4-game stretch that's the toughest. I don't know that anybody in college football has the 4-game stretch Alabama's got. Between
Georgia, Tennessee,
A&M, and LSU.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I mean, even with that bye week,
I would say 3 of them could be in the playoffs.
Yes,
and I'm not counting Tennessee as a playoff team, and they're going to be in the top 20.
Especially if they get Joey Aguilar back. I mean, I definitely think I mean, their quarterback situation is somewhat concerning. But yeah, so it's going to be tough for Alabama. But I said last night, I feel like 9-3 is kind of my, 8-4 is falling short of my expectations. I think at that point we need to start having a conversation. But I think that 9-3, 10-2, not going 11-1, and even 10-2 right now, I'm kind of on that 9-3. We'll just have to see how things come together based off the spring.
9-3 too. I should not be surprised that we have the same.
So
yeah,
that's
9-3 feels right to me. And like I said, last team in, last team out. 9-3 in the SEC with the 9-game schedule era. That's going to land you right there on maybe you're in, maybe you're out. It sort of largely depends on everyone else's case, not just yours.
exactly.
Who are you competing with for that last spot or so in the playoff? But 9-3. I think it can get SEC teams that finish 9-3 have a strong case for inclusion.
Yeah, and I mean, if you were to look at 9-3 and you were to say, okay, and just me quickly as a hypothetical, they lost to Georgia. Now, granted, that would be at home, not great, but you lose to A&M at home. Once again, not great, but that's 2 college football playoff teams, in my opinion. You go on the road, you lose to LSU. That could get you right there to 9-3, and and that would include wins over Vanderbilt on the road. It would include a win against Auburn,
Tennessee,
Tennessee
Vanderbilt,
on
Tennessee,
the road,
Kentucky
on the road,
which I think is going to end up being a 7 or 8 win team. I think
South Carolina, who I think is going to be one of those top 25 programs.
Yep.
So they could end up having like a really good resume for a 9-3 team, which is why they would probably be bubble. But if we're sitting here talking about 9-3. To fans, some of fans are going to be disappointed, but that would be considering a lot of the question marks. I think 9-3 would be really good. I also think that better than that, maybe you steal one from either Georgia or Texas A&M at home. It's also possible that you do steal one of those and then you lose one of these, another one of these tough games that you have. So there's a lot of ways that it could work out. I understand by looking at the schedule, if you're really down on Alabama, you can find 4 or 5 losses. I just think that the talent there and the ability of when they get their backs against the wall, they really come out swinging. Their biggest issue is when everybody's singing their praises. And so I think that it's going to be very difficult for them to get 7-5 because if things now, granted, maybe if things fall apart enough early or something, maybe it's keeping everybody together. Maybe then that's a disaster scenario. But I'm just not foreseeing that right now. Jimmy, you got anything else before we hop out of here, brother?
No, I just want to say that the dire predictions, like Brett McMurphy, basically having Alabama at 7-5. I mean, I would what? How do you think Alabama's falling so far so fast? I mean, this was a 10-2 team last year, 7-1 in the SEC, number 1 seed in Atlanta in the SEC championship, makes the playoff field and wins a playoff game. And now you're saying 7. What? And I suppose he would start with, well, I don't know what they have a quarterback. Well, you could have said the same thing about Alabama last year.
Yeah.
and look what they had at quarterback, maybe the QB2 in the draft. And Kalen Russell, and who may not even beat out Austin Mack because Austin's pretty good himself, but I just don't understand anyone being that down on Alabama based on how Alabama has recruited consistently under DeBoer and Saban before him. The roster's just too good for that.
Yeah, and I mean a lot of these games. I mean, how many really just back and forth have they really lost? I mean. Yeah, Vanderbilt ended up being a 5-point loss, but they got up multiple scores, and then they started matching Alabama. At that point, Alabama could never come back. They lost to Oklahoma. That was a 24-3 final score. Tennessee, you lose by 7 in 2024. Michigan was, I guess, maybe back and forth a little bit, but this past season, you get beat by 2 touchdowns. You get beat by, it was a close game against Oklahoma for sure, but then you get beat down by Georgia and Indiana. So it's like a lot of times when they get in these dog fights and stuff, they're coming out on top. They figure out ways to win. That's something that Kalen DeBoer did at Washington. So to sit there and say, are you predicting that Alabama is going to get beat down 4 or 5 times, and that's why you're predicting 4 or 5 losses? Or do you think that their ability to win a lot of those close games is going to fall off all of a sudden, and they're going to go from being a team who pretty consistently gets it done in those tight back and forth games and to becoming a team that loses a lot of those back and forth games?
DeBoer's been a pretty good close game coach. He was at Washington, and he's been, for the most part, pretty good at Alabama, winning close games. Georgia is going to out-talent Alabama maybe, but by how much? I mean, and even that's kind of arguable based on recruiting rankings. And I'm just saying,
they've had a game plan for Georgia in both of the first 2 matchups. They've been ready, they've been focused, and they've understood the importance. And I will say, when you get everybody moving in the right direction under Kalen DeBoer, I think they do some pretty magical things.
I'm looking
I
forward
think
to the one loss. What do you think the one loss from Vegas number is going to be? The over/under number on wins for Alabama. What do you think Vegas is going to say?
I would say 8.5, maybe 9.5. It would either be 8.5 or 9.5.
It's going to be 8.5 or 9.5. I agree. And,
Yeah.
and I believe we're trending with all these analysts being 8.5. And
yeah,
gosh, I'm gonna feel like like I literally want to bet the over.
Yeah, I agreed.
Now 9.5, I would not, by the way.
And
9.5, I'm not betting the over.
Here's what people are forgetting. And I understand that Alabama has had one of the most talented rosters in Kalen DeBoer's first 2 years. And I mean, they finished with 9 wins in the regular season and 10 wins in those first 2 years. And it's a different kind of talent, but in a lot of ways, that's a good thing because it's more of the Kalen DeBoer type of talent. The first 2 years, or at least the first year for sure, it was the Nick Saban talent trying to mesh with Kalen DeBoer and what he wanted to do and Kane Womack. And then in year 2, there was still a lot of that lingering around. Now it's a very talented team, a very unproven team, but the talent actually matches what the coaches want to do. And so to sit there and say, well, but still, because we don't know a lot of these spots, we're going to predict they're going to hit the under. It's like, okay, just know that this is the type of team. And I said it last night on the show, I could see scenarios where they end up, if they can figure out a way to be in the playoff conversation and get in the playoffs, when all of these guys have played an entire season together by that point, this could be one of the most talented, hottest teams in the country by the end of next season. Not saying it's going to happen. We got to wait and see how it all plays out. But if some of these things, if you have some growing pains early, offensive line's trying to gel, guys are inexperienced, what will they look like after 12 or 13 starts? You know what I'm saying?
You're due some good injury luck too.
A good point.
I think the team did have good injury luck last year in September, October. You hadn't really lost but 1 or 2 guys for the year, just a generally football team. And then about mid-November comes around, and that went off a cliff. I think it went off a cliff. People want to blame me. I think it went off a cliff right about the time I said, boy, this team's had a lot of good injury luck. And then it was then Alabama got slaughtered by the injury. I had Georgia game in Atlanta. They had virtually no. I had a dude reach out to me, by the way, when I was talking about on the show, about how injured the team is. And I had a guy reach out to me that would know off the record that said, all 5 offensive linemen are in the training room, all 5.
Yes.
And I didn't even know that. I mean, so I was talking about how bad the injured, and I didn't even know that when I said it.
I think the biggest thing everybody wants to say, what Indiana showed us in 2025 is you got to be super experienced. Go get the super seniors. Go get the 25-year-olds, wherever you can get them. No, what I learned from Indiana is a lesson that Alabama needs to learn from Indiana, and that is more in the offseason is not always better. And I think in a lot of ways, a lot of their injury problems had to do with a fatigued team that started to wear down when they've played a very physical SEC schedule. And it was every week they were having to bring it, because what did Kalen DeBoer say before last summer began? This is going to be the hardest summer of their lives. And everybody laughed because, you don't know Nick Saban's summers, brother. You can sit there and from what I heard, they did beat them pretty good. And there was a reason that your running back in a scrimmage in fall camp is breaking his collarbone because of a lick that he took. It was physical. Right. Guys were getting after each other, and there was some popping, and I think there was too much of that. And one thing that Kirk Cincinnati has said is it's shorter practices. We're very efficient. We don't do a whole lot as far as contact. We try to keep these guys fresh and available. And you saw a team by the end of last season. Were they that much more talented than Oregon? Were they that much more talented than Alabama? Or had they structured things both? I think they were better coached. I'll go ahead and put that out there. But also, I think they were a little bit fresher. They had been through a grind of a season, but they also didn't destroy themselves when they didn't have to as far as the physicality in practice. A lot of people right now, I think the offensive line play, you've got a problem with not being physical enough and not getting those guys enough reps. But I also think there's a counterpoint to that where if you are efficient in how you practice and you can get what you need to get done without putting them through the ringer each and every day, in some ways that could end up actually benefiting your football team. And I think in a lot of ways, Indiana proved that. Do you have anything else before we hop out of here, brother?
No, I just say that anybody wants to build a team like Indiana and they think that's the path to winning championships now is having a team full of 24-year-olds. I couldn't disagree more. I did just watch Indiana do what they did. I think it's an outlier. I'd remind everyone that a 24-year-old football player has been passed on by the NFL about 3 times. And
Yeah.
I don't want to build a team full of guys who aren't appealing to the NFL. I'd rather have a team full of 3-and-done guys, and they're all 21 years old, and they're all 3-and-done guys. I'll take that team. So will Nick Saban.
Even Kirk Cignetti doesn't believe that, because he's not doing it again. Like, yes, he's going to get Josh Hoover, who is an experienced player, and he has added some experience to the transfer portal. But he's not focusing on 3 stars and lowly rated 4 stars who are super hungry. He's not going to James Madison to get his entire roster. He's not going to all these small schools. He's getting the big name guys out of the transfer portal. Any big name guy that he can. He doesn't care about, age. Experience certainly helps. He does value experience. But even the guy who just won a national championship and went undefeated, with that type of approach, doesn't believe in that type of approach when it comes to long-term building success.
They got a little fortunate, and hey, kudos to them for doing
They're using this.
They
as
got
a
little fortunate that they ended up with I think a lot of late bloomers. I mean, they're just a lot of, because a lot of them are good NFL prospects now, but they weren't 2-3 years ago, or they wouldn't have been in Indiana. But now they are a full 5-6 years of development. And they ended up with a really good group. I mean, I think double-digit guys could end up being drafted off that team.
And we don't talk enough about how it's not that they were all really experienced. A lot of that was that they were really experienced with Kirk Cignetti and his systems. Yeah. It's not, Josh Hoover's going to be different. Now, Fernando Mendoza, your quarterback, he came in super intelligent kid, could be a freaking rocket scientist if he wanted to. And so, he picked up on things quickly. He had a Heisman campaign. He had NFL talent going into last year. But, a lot of it wasn't just about having guys with experience. It was having guys with experience, multiple years of experience with you. And that's something that Alabama, especially in 2027, I think they're aiming for and they're going to have. So they don't have to go to the transfer portal to get guys. And when they did bring in transfer portal players, what do they get? A lot of redshirt freshmen, a lot of sophomores, guys who's going to have multiple years, and they can grow in this system and develop. And hopefully in the future that ends up benefiting you as long as you continue to be good at roster retention. So, yeah, it's another little rant, I guess, that we go on. Great conversation, though, Jimmy. We had planned some other topics. There was no point. I thought we started to run with it, and I thought it was good, productive conversation. I appreciate you hopping on here with me. We appreciate everybody for tuning in. This is almost an hour and 15 in. Feel like Jimmy and I could have gone at least for another 6 hours if we wanted to, but we also understand that when people stare at that hour and 15-minute video, they're like, do I got time for an hour and 15 minutes? And so we try to, I think the 25-30-minute model was probably more productive, but you and I can't, at least I can't shut up.
Our wives tell us, wives tell us, we cannot shut up.
So, that's what y'all end up getting. I apologize, but this was great conversation. Appreciate you. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. That's something that we want to get up is, the people who are watching versus the people who are subscribed. Really important for us, for you to hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed this content, and then get on over to rowback.com. Use the promo code Crimson20 to get 20% off your order, and we will talk to you guys soon.